Uh, Thank you so much for that warm introduction. It is a bit like, do any of you remember 1964 when the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan? And do you remember the next act? No, nobody does. That's a bit of my cover if this doesn't go well. Nobody will remember anyway. Thank you. I am quite honored to be here today. Thank you, Dean Bates, Dean Kappels, administration, faculty, parents, friends, and graduates. It is really, really an honor to be here. I am going to wander around a little bit here because what I was going to say is not what I'm going to say. It will come straight from my heart, what I'm going to say. There is some slides up here, and I know these guys are sitting and say, good Lord, they're going to do one more PowerPoint presentation that will kill us. I will skip through some of these slides and hit some of the important ones because some of us are visual learners as well as auditory learners, et cetera, et cetera. And it's an honor for me also because I do have a deep Maine connection. When I was a child, 2 times, my favorite vacations were on Monhegan Island, which is somewhere 10 miles off the coast of Maine. My wife of 42 years is from Maine, Bangor. My daughter is a nurse at Mercy down the street. My 2-year-old granddaughter is a real native of Maine, who I will be visiting afterwards from here. Bob Bing-Yu is a friend of about 30 years. He and I actually started a special interest group in American Association of Medical Colleges on residents teaching residents how to teach. Not because we were the experts, but because back then nobody else was interested, and we did become the experts, so that you don't know this about Bob. We accredit in Singapore. And so one of the most famous doctors in Singapore came to me and said, I'm on a great adventure. I said, what? He says, I am taking a master's in education, and I'm with the most exciting mentor I've ever been with. I said, who is that? Dr. Bob Bing-Yu from Maine. From Maine. Dr. Linder is my boss, so I better get on with this. She wants me off the stage as soon as possible. In 1863, Edward Everett gave what the Chicago Tribune said was the most important speech in the history of the United States that will be quoted forever and ever after there. It was such an astonishing speech. He talked for 2 hours. Can anybody quote anything from that speech? The follow-up speech, they said, was a national embarrassment. It was a terrible speech. And it started 77 years ago. I will try to be as brief as I can. Some of you, and this is an honor because you have done an extraordinary thing. You've been in this cauldron and worked in ways that you didn't know that you were going to work. You've done extraordinary things. You're extraordinary people who will do extraordinary things as you move forward. But you didn't do it alone. We've already said, here are your family and friends who loved you, who believed in you, sometimes when you didn't believe in yourself. Your friends were there, and you were there for each other. What I want to talk about today is a little bit different than what I have up here. I want to talk about awe. Awe is an interesting word, right? Awe really has a combination of meanings that contradict one another. Awe is this deep, deep, deep sense of wonder and a deep, deep, deep sense of terror. We have 2 words that mean the same thing. Awesome, which takes that wonder piece, and awful. Most of us have a few experiences of awe in our lifetime. We go up to a mountaintop and say, oh my gosh, this is transcendent. Or we are incredibly terrified at a certain place. What we are doing, what your next step is, and I represent, I think, the next step. The next step is a step into the world of awe, constantly. You will be doing things that people just a few short years ago thought were miracles. You will be interacting with patients and curing them and taking them on a journey that only you can take them on. You know, we're all writing a story with our lives, right? We're writing a book. And the hero of my story is me, right? And the hero of your story is you. And we rarely turn that pen over to anybody else, except when we get sick, except when we're down and don't know what's going on. And the person that we hand that pen to is you. You aren't only writing your story, you're going to be writing the story of thousands of patients in your lifetime. At least a chapter, or a sentence, or a paragraph. And in that paragraph, again, you will be on the awesome side, but there will sometimes be the awful side. Patients won't get better. People will come to you, and their lives will be dramatically changed in a way that they couldn't figure it out. As Dr. Bates said, the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education, the ACGME's mission is not to accredit. Our mission is to increase the health of the public and help your education to get there, and we use accreditation as a vehicle to do that. We try to help put you on the path to mastery. Mastery is not a goal, it's not reachable, it's a pathway. And we try to do that, and we've started that here. We'll see, we'll put you in some. And we do this, Dr. Linder is on our board, and the board has come up with 4 philosophical pillars upon which the ACGME stands, and this is where we're going to talk. This talk is a build on the previous 2 conversations, burnout and you. We're going to talk about you, your burnout level and what you can do about it, but how you can travel in this house of law that we've talked about. So the 4 philosophical pillars are, the first one is the safety and quality of the care of the patient under you, July 1st, and therein. The second philosophical pillar is the care and quality of the care and the mastery and the safety of that care under your care after you graduate, 10, 12, 15. So we've got to prepare you not for tomorrow, we've got to prepare you for 50 years from now. And that's what you'll be doing. Second one is excellence in professionalism through the modeling of your faculty, which you've already seen. They will teach you about professionalism and the facement of self-interest, but also attach you to the joy and curiosity of what it means to be a physician. And the last one is a commitment to the well-being of everybody in the healthcare team, the whole environment in which you will be entering. That's our goal, okay? But sometimes when somebody falls off to the awful side rather than the awesome side of the tightrope that you walk, we hit a different thing. We know something about you. I do. I know something about you that differentiates you guys from these guys over here. And there are at least 4 personality characteristics that do that, okay? The first one is you tend to be more obsessive-compulsive than anybody else in this room. And if you weren't when you started, when you were in the Clarion Hotel, you became that way out of necessity. My son is in his internship right now. He showed me a website of people studying for how they set their desks up for the step 1, right? It's this crazy thing. If you haven't seen it, I mean, they like compete for who's the most obsessively organized. It's a really, really good trait to get through the kinds of things that you've done. It's not necessarily the best trait in the world when you're trying to develop a relationship, okay? Overly conscientious. You will get things done that the rest of us won't. Our problem with our duty hours sometimes isn't that we have troglodyte program directors who are making you work extra. It's the resident who wants to stay with a patient longer because they care. Because they care. Or wants to take advantage of an educational opportunity because you want to be the best physician you can be. You tend to do things and stick to things that people don't. There's another thing we know about you. Anybody remember the book, The Road Less Traveled? The Road Less Traveled was a book that was on the New York Times bestseller list for a gazillion years, written by a psychiatrist from Harvard. And what he said was, in the first couple of paragraphs, he defined an adult. An adult is somebody who can defer pleasure, right? An adult is somebody, if they like ice cream and don't like broccoli, they can eat the broccoli before the ice cream. What happens, though, with you all is you take that to a pathological degree. Always deferring pleasure, right? So you say to yourself, okay, or your significant other, we'll do this after this first year of medical school. I'll get it all down, we'll deal with it. Oh my gosh, the second year is harder than the first year. Oh no, there's not enough residency slots out there. I have to do all this stuff, and you'll hit internship, and I'll show you in a few seconds what will happen there. There's a poem written by somebody else, but it really resonates with physicians that I think hits you guys square in the face, and this is what you've got to think about. It's a poem, and I'll recite it in its entirety. 10 years ago, I turned my face for a moment, ... and that became my life. 10 years ago, I turned my face for a moment, ... and that became my life. I'm going to get you up after this. Don't worry about that, okay? And then the last personality characteristic, you represent extraordinary people. Top 2% of the United States or the world, or since I don't know if there's any people anywhere, the galaxy, in terms of your talent, achievement, and intelligence. You really do. But I know something about you. You don't believe it. At least a significant portion of you don't believe it. You're filled with self-doubt in some ways, and there are people sitting here who are just worried to death that we'll discover them to be the fraud that they really know that they are. Am I wrong? No. I just had 35 heads going like this. Okay, we're going to put you in this environment. Ready? You could work up to 80 hours. Wherever your debate is on whether that's good or whether that's not, it's a long time to work. All right? People think I'm a sort of nutcase at the ACGME because I work long hours. If I work 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday, I've hit 60. In order for me to hit 80, I'd have to work 10 hours on Saturday and an additional 10 hours on Sunday. That's really, really hard. Staying awake up to 24 hours. Change. It's hard to deal with, right? Look around you. Your support systems are here. Some of you are going to stay, and the people you love are going to go somewhere else. Some of you are going to go somewhere else, and the people you love are going to stay. But we do something more insidious to you. We put you on rotations. Right? This self-doubting individual, obsessive, compulsive, conscientious individual, we put them on rotations where by definition at the beginning they are not competent. Get them up just to a little bit of competent, and what do? We pull the rug right out from under you. In Singapore, by law, they forbade us to do 1-month rotations. Specifically for that reason. They thought it was cruel. Little time for family and significant other, loneliness and social isolation. Your mom, who could be over here, will not understand what you're going through. The second-year resident has had a selective amnesia, won't remember what you're going through, etc. Work overload, overwhelming amounts of responsibility, exposure to things that other people just flee away from, not just shy away from. You'll be dealing with every day. Sickness, death, dying, anxiety, fears. I can never read enough. All right, Gary Small in the 80s identified this as a syndrome. And this is what we want to prevent, and this is what we're going to build on from the previous two talks. Episodic cognitive impairment due to lack of sleep. You know, you're in the middle, you find yourself home, and you don't know how you got home. You're in the middle of a really interesting conversation, and all you're hearing is blah, 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 blah. For all I know, that's what you're hearing right now. Blah, 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 blah. Chronic anger and resentment due to demands on your time and energy. Family, significant other discord. In other words, what should be your first safe harbor against the stresses and strains you're going to be dealing with sometimes ends up to be the first casualty. And then last, I was at Jefferson Medical College for 19 years. I used to take students on their first patient interview. All they wanted to do was to do it right. They loved seeing patients. They would go back and talk to the same patient. If you get to the wrong place, and I really like you, and I say, boy, you're so good, I'm going to give you a gift that I think you'll really like. One more patient to talk to today. Right? Okay. That's what we want to prevent. That's what we want to prevent. And why us, why now? Have any of you read this book? This is especially family members. Pick this book up. I think I was the first person in the United States to read it just out of because I came off a plane It came out the first day, and I read it. It explains why somebody would do. It's about a resident, a neurosurgery resident, who's dying. He actually has cancer, and he's writing this book. And he knows he's dying, and he continues to be a resident, even with all the things that I just talked about in the environment. Why? Because he found real meaning in that. We'll talk about that in a second. Pick this up. You'll understand what's going on in some ways. It'll exhilarate you. It will make you cry, tears of joy and tears of sadness in some ways. But it's a great book. And we talked a little bit about the burnout. What all this shows is, and I'll skip it from there, physicians are burned out, practicing physicians, to a rate of 50%. That's in contrast with the general population, which is about 20%. Right? How can we take people who are on the most meaningful job and the most awesome place to be and burn them out? So and that's to show you that it's not about hours, right? Sorry. Oh no, I did the wrong thing. Can you get me back in? Yeah, right there. Okay. You look on, this down here is burnout, the level of burnout, and this is satisfied with the work-life balance. In terms of being burned out, you'll see that the neurosurgeons are less, and they think they have the best work-life balance. It's not about hours. It's about meaning. Dermatology is all the way up at the top. Surprise, right? This is a magazine article. This is Time Magazine 2015. This was in here. It was an 8-page article. It's about burnout and well-being of physicians. It goes 8 pages. On the 8th page, I came in, they interviewed me, they misquoted me on that 8th page. I had the pleasure of being there. The point is, I got 200 emails of people who read 8 pages of Time magazine because they were concerned about you. This picture went viral, if you remember it. This picture is a picture of a trauma surgeon who lost a patient and went out and broke down. This picture went viral. Why? Because it hit a chord with people because they said, physicians care about us. We should care about them. What's wrong with this picture? He's alone. Somebody's taking a picture rather than comforting this guy. We'll come back to that. So what are we doing and why us? We'll skip a couple of these things. I'll use this one. This is my favorite philosopher, Jerry Garcia. Why us? Somebody has to do something. It's just incredibly pathetic. It has to be the ACGME. So here's what we're doing, and then we're going to come up to what you can do for yourselves and for each other, and then we'll close. Okay? Is that okay? Okay? Here's what we're doing. We have started our board. Dr. Linder, again, has been one of the leaders. Our board has said, enough. We started a national movement. We have a whole task force going. This is an equation that says B is behavior is a function of the person in his or her environment. In other words, we're not going to blame the fact that people are stressed out and burned out on the people who are stressed out and burned out. We've done something to help this along. So we're going to take care of looking at the environment. We'll skip that. And we're going to take a look at educating everybody using the ACGME levers to influence change. I'll tell you about that in a second. Ongoing research and collaborating across the continuum. I'm going to hit the second bullet. We have just created a series of requirements for programs to foster your well-being. First time ever. First time ever. And we will be moving in that direction. We are looking, I don't know which site visit you have coming up, if it's a clear site visit. The bad news is I don't control any of the site visits, so you invited the wrong guy. But we visit every institution every 18 months. We have put a focus area there. One of the 6 focus areas is the well-being of the environment. We're doing everything in our power to make sure that something happens that changes that. We're also, take the last bullet point there, working very, very closely with every other organization that has anything to do with physician education, certification, accreditation, et cetera, to change things. The National Academy of Medicine has our CEO, Tom Naska, the CEO of the AAMC, the Association of American Medical Colleges. They are co-chairing a thing on well-being of physicians. That's incredibly important. 50 organizations, I'm on the planning group, 50 organizations across the United States are addressing this issue, and we're putting the power of everybody into controlling the environmental things that we talked about. But that leads us to you, right? What can you do? You've brought up the problem. You brought up the problem. What can you do about this in this house of law? Well, the first thing, this is one of my favorite quotes from Martin Luther King. You don't have to see the whole staircase. You've got to take the first step, though, okay? And here's some assumptions. If you care for yourself, you're going to take better care of your patients. If you don't practice, you won't do it. A healthy learning environment will lead to improved health care for all. So here are the clues. I ushered in Philadelphia with a small team of people the white coat ceremony in 1996. First one. Did you go to the white coat ceremony? Wasn't that a moving environment? Ceremony? Makes you cry. I mean, to see that. That white coat signifies something. It signifies mastery, it signifies competence, it signifies that you're coming in the room. But the white coat doesn't mean anything if you are not in it, if you forget you. Okay, and we'll come back to that. The motivation trifecta and take care of yourself. That's that white coat. It's just a hanger. Or it's just a dirty piece of laundry in here if you're not in it, right? One size doesn't fit. It's what's inside that's more important than the white coat. It's what you bring to this, the human side of this. Medicine is a human enterprise. You're human. You have all the vulnerabilities. You have all the wishes, dreams, fears, exhilarations that every other human being has. And what we don't want you to do is drive that out of you. Right? It's like a carpenter. We want you to develop enough callus on your hands so that you don't get blistered every time you go into a really emotional thing, but not too much so that you can't feel the grain of the wood or that you can't feel the hair on your loved one's head. So that's dancing in that time of awe. You're unique. What you bring, nobody else has ever brought. Michael Balint, in 1957, writing a book on the doctor and healing, says the most important drug the physician has in his or her arsenal is the drug, the physician. You. How much of you is therapeutic? How much of you is toxic? Right? You are important. You're special, incredibly special, and you're a hero. Think about the collective unconscious. Every story that you've ever seen, think of television, popular culture, Gunsmoke. You guys don't remember, but you remember Gunsmoke, right? Who was in Gunsmoke? Gunsmoke had the sheriff, the deputy, the sheriff's girlfriend, and the doctor. Star Trek has, in every iteration, what does Star Trek have? The captain, the science officer, and the doctor. You're a hero. You're the one that takes the pen when we come in and starts helping us write a different story than we did. Don't discount that. Don't discount that. You may not feel it, you may not see it, but you are it. Superman isn't Superman because of the costume. Superman is Superman because Superman's Superman. You're the doctor. Here are the motivation trifecta. I'm just going to hit the last two. People who are motivated to go and do and walk that journey of mastery have these three components. The autonomy piece, you'll get more and more of as you go through. It's going to be less an internship than it is in the others. But the mastery piece, to be in touch with, I'm getting better. I used to run stress support groups for every specialty and every intern and every specialty at Jefferson. And somebody would come up to me at the end of the first year and I'd say, what was the worst thing? They said, we didn't learn anything. I said, you didn't learn anything? You're the same person you were on July 1st? I said, no, I'm not. Staying in touch with that journey that you're on is really important. And I'm going to come back to the purpose thing in just a second, okay? Here are the three things to do. Control. You talked about this much more eloquently than I am. Do you play the guitar? You can't play it as often, but pick it up every once in a while. Do you like to run? You might not be able to run 10 miles every day, but you might be able to run 2 miles 3 times a week. Control what you can control, and give up what you can't control. We usually do the opposite, right? We try to control the things we can't control. Connection. Just look around. Really, seriously. Look at each other. No, really, I'm serious. Look at each other. These connections got you through some really, really tough times, didn't they? They really did. So keep connecting. He's going to New Hampshire. He's not going to Mars. Connect with him. Connect with each other. Connect with the new people. Make sure you have a deep connection with the new people. We got our residents had a 4-hour session on what they wanted most in terms of well-being. You know what they wanted most? Somebody to come up to them, put their hand on their shoulder, and say, "How you doing?" and really want to know the answer. Do that for each other, okay? With your family, they love you deeply. Don't shut them out. With your faculty members, wise guys and mentors who sometimes will pick you up and sometimes will believe in you so much they'll say, I'm not picking you up. You get up because you can do it. And they know the time to go one way or the other with your friends. The last one is meaning. You all are involved in probably the most meaningful work on the planet. People come to you in the most meaningful, deep, hurting moments of their lives and give you the pen. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's intuitively obvious. You have to take care of the survival needs before you can get to meaning needs. That's never been empirically verified. Flip it on its head. Viktor Frankl. Have you read this book, any of you? Read it. You can read it on a plane ride. It's really thin. Viktor Frankl is a Viennese psychiatrist, contemporary of Freud, who was a concentration camp survivor. And what he tried to figure out is why certain people survived in the concentration camp and why people didn't. The conclusion he came to, if you could have hope for the future or see meaning in the situation that you're in now, you survived and thrived. You will not always be in a satisfactory place. You will be tired. You will hear whining people. You will have been scolded in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully not much. If they are, tell me. I will take care of it. But if you stay in touch with the meaning, remember why you came in to do this. You will go through this, not just getting through it, you'll thrive yourself through it. Deep meaning can beat an unsatisfactory momentary experience any time of the day. And we won't see this because you'll be in that picture, or you'll be in that picture, or you'll be in that picture. I want you to give that gift to other people. So if you don't think you're good enough to do any of this stuff, you've never been in bed with a mosquito, all right? And don't be afraid to try something new, even if it feels risky, because remember, professionals built the Titanic, amateurs built the Ark. Okay? Last two things, and this is I probably way exceeded over time, and Peter's going, get him off the stage. I'm getting off the stage right now, okay? This is LaSalle Lafall. LaSalle Lafall is one of the preeminent surgeons in the United States, first African-American head of the American College of Surgeons, and he tells a great story. He's an aficionado of jazz, and he was listening to a jazz recording of John Coltrane, and with him was another jazz great, Cannonball Adderley. And as they're listening to this, Cannonball Adderley goes, "Ooh, did you hear that?" And LaSalle Lafall says, yeah, I heard that. He says, "No, did you hear that?" And he says, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Did you hear the grace note?" And LaSalle Lafall says, what's a grace note? A grace note is one extra note that the musician puts in the measure just for the delight of the soul of the listener. Be a grace note to each other. Be a grace note to your faculty. Be a grace note to your family. Be a grace note to your residents, Awe. You're in the house of awe. Miracles, tragedies. There's a story in the Talmud. The Talmud talks about the courts of ancient Israel, the temple in ancient Israel. There's a series of courtyards that go from outside to inside, and they become more and more sacred as they go in until you reach the center, and in the center there's just a room with nothing in it, and that is the most sacred room of all. That's the room of God. And nothing can compare to God, so you can't put anything in there. And nobody's allowed to go into the courtyard and to that room, except one time a year. The high priest has to go in, and he has one function. The high priest goes in and says the name of God. Now, they don't know, because the name of God is unpronounceable, they don't know what he said, but they suppose that what he did was he either breathed or he wept. You are going in, for the rest of your journey, you're going in to a sacred place of awe where people take their first breath, people take their last breath. People weep tears of joy because you have affected their life in a way that they thought they were going on a path that was unalterable, and you have been there to help it. People weep because their lives have been put on that unalterable path that they didn't know existed. You are going into that situation. You are going into a sacred place. Now, one of the things is, so only you're the high priest in this thing. The others worried, what would happen if something happened to the high priest in there? The high priest had a heart attack or somehow stumbled and knocked himself out, or God got angry enough and zapped him in some way, right? So what they did was they tied a rope around his ankle, because if something happened, they would pull him out. You be that rope for each other. Because the high priest it wasn't just for coming out. The high priest always knew he was connected. Connect, connect, connect with others. Don't let each other down. Don't let yourself down. And when something happens, pull each other out. That's what I have for you. Thus endeth the talk. This is the ACGME. This is where we are out there. We ask you to join us and do your part on this journey. Stay tuned. Congratulations again.